I came in with the benefit of I was a 6 Sense customer for 5 years. And so when I joined the company, it was all about let's show how we're using it. The fact that we were marketing to marketers is exciting, right? Because marketers get it. And because we were the target persona, we recognize that by showing them the power and the promise of the platform versus just telling them, it's just so much more interesting.
Hi, guys. I'm Kevin Kerner. I'm the host of Tech Marketing Rewired. This past week, I was so honored to have Saima Rashid on the podcast, catching her right as she was taking a little time off after an incredible run at Six Sense and right before starting her next chapter, which should happen in the next couple weeks. Her rise there, as many of you know, is nothing short of remarkable, making the leap from a deep analytics role and background to leading the entire marketing organization for one of the biggest brands in MarTech. And because of that unique journey, I reached out to her and I wanted her perspective on a couple big things. First, I was really curious about the playbook she ran at Six Sense and what it takes to build such a great brand and demand engine and become a customer zero of your own product, which the team was very good at. But I also wanted to tap into the insight she's gained from talking to literally thousands of marketing leaders through the CMO Coffee Talk community and the Makers podcast at Six Sense. And we got into so many things, including accountability, AI, talent mandates, and all kinds of other things that CMOs are facing right now. Conversation was a fantastic look inside of one of the sharpest minds in the industry. But before we start, I wanted to mention that this podcast is sponsored by my company, Mighty and True. We are an agency that focuses exclusively on the technology industry, and we work with tech CMOs to close the gap between a bold strategy and actually getting it to market. You can learn more about us at www.mightyandtrue.com. So let's get to it. This is Tech Marketing Rewired. Hi, Simon. How you doing?
I'm doing so good, Kevin. How about you?
Good, really good. Thank you so much for being on. I'm very honored to have you on the podcast, especially after taking a little time off from your Six Sense work, which I've known a lot about. How you feeling? Are you feel rested?
I feel rested, recharged, rejuvenated, and I don't know. It's rare to get the time off
Yeah.
as somebody who's been working since, gosh, I was 20 years old, full time, and it's one of those rare blessings to be able to take some time off and spend it with the family and focus a little bit on yourself. And so it's been a fantastic 6 weeks of just being. I feel so grateful for it.
So great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you miss the podcast life? I watched your revenue. Was it Revenue Makers?
Yep, revenue
Yeah,
makers. I miss the camaraderie with my co-host. I miss talking to really interesting people, but I'm doing
yeah,
that right now with you. So
yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, great. Well, we have a lot there's a lot I want to dig into with you. I thought what we do is have have a couple different pivots or themes for the podcast. The first one I wanted, since you've had such a amazing career at Six Sense, and there's such an impressive brand. I wanted to talk a little bit about that career,
Yeah.
and then I also wanted, since you also are very connected with the CMO Coffee Talk community, I thought I would pitch some imperatives that I'm hearing from my friends that are CMOs and marketing leaders, and we kind of talk those through as well. Does that sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
Cool, cool. Let's dig into it. So, let's roll back the calendar here back to your Sixth Sense days. And I thought it was interesting that you were brought in the world of analytics. Like your background is a really strong analytical background, which is kind of a dream background for a CMO, I think, a marketing leader. Um, I was going to ask you, analytics is very much numbers and it's creative in some way, but then you have the marketing side, which is also sort of intangible. And when you first started in the leadership role that you're in now after the analytics experience, how did you transition from the analytics side to a more department facing management role?
Yeah, I think it was an evolution. And I would say, even when I was in pure analytics roles, which I have been for 20 years, The data is great. The data is important, but unless somebody is doing something with it, and unless you're translating the data into actual insights and then driving action from it, who cares? And so even when I was a senior analyst analyzing data, it was much more about the application and the insights. And so I feel like I've been playing the role and preparing for the leadership role my entire career. Oftentimes sharing insights and recommending actions, and oftentimes just being given the keys and being told go do it yourself. And so even pure analytics roles and even the best analytics people I've worked with and then that I've hired and that I've mentored, it is all about doing something with it and taking that next action. And so I've always been doing that. And I was hired at Six Sense to build out that function and bring help the company scale for, after so many years of hyper growth, there was a need to really put in certain measurement practices in place and consistency around an operating rhythm, all with the goal, though, of let's go make the things that we do better. Let's look at what the insights are. Let's find what's working well and do more of that. And so, regardless of, and this would be a message really to anyone in an analytics role, make the role what you want it to be. Make sure that, the best dashboard that you're building should go well beyond just taking those metrics and putting it on a slide. What is happening? What is the outcome? And if you're not being heard, go higher. If you're not being heard, put in more concrete recommendations because you have a lot of insight and a lot of goodness to share, and you want to make sure that it's being leveraged.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting just hearing you talk about that. Like good analytics role is really storytelling. And it's
Yes.
interesting that you move from this analytics role where you're probably a pretty good data storyteller into a creative role and brand role and this type of thing. I bet that transition was actually a pretty good one for you.
It also I think, speaks to how marketing itself as a function has changed. It's become so much more technical, so much more data driven over the past, I want to say 5, 6 years, that my experience lended itself very well. And by the way, it also allowed me to expand my horizons. Brand, design,
Yeah.
product marketing, PR, analyst relations, all functions that I'd never owned in the past. And so being able to learn from fantastic folks who are experts in those fields and being able to also bring my data lens to those fields that maybe historically hadn't been as data driven. I think it was a perfect balance.
Yeah, and I think you even in some of my research, I think you even moved from the mindset of measurement there at Success from MQL to more meaningful type of measures. Can you tell us when you arrived in that more leadership role, like what type of measurements did you put in place? Did you see, okay, I'm going to have to change the mindset of some of the measures here?
Yeah, I think Six Sense was ahead of its time, meaning it is an account based platform, and so a lot of the measurement was rooted in accounts. But when you are going to make a move from an MQL centric approach to a broader account based approach, the metrics change, of course, but you have to bring an entire organization along that journey. And by the way, that's not just the marketing team, that is your board, that is your executive team, that is sales, that is the BDR org, right? Everyone needs to be on board with a shift like this. And how do you start that? You start that by telling the story. I think we're hitting on a theme here now, but telling the
Hmm.
story of how you're winning today. I think unless you're selling a very transactional product, which most enterprise companies aren't, right? You are talking to multiple people. It takes many, many touches along that buyer's journey, right? 10, 12 people, hundreds of touches along the buyer's journey. And we know that buyers tend to, B2B buyers specifically, tend to be anonymous and they don't really want to chat with sales. They want to do their research themselves and talk to their peers. And so, how do you control that entire journey, or how do you at least orchestrate a journey and visualize those touch points and share that with the folks who you are trying to convince that we need to do this differently? Once you do that, everyone understands, okay, this is not a last touch or a first touch attribution story. It is the sum of all of those activities that are helping us influence the buying group, educate them so that when they are ready to talk to us or talk to any vendor, they've included us on that list. And so I always start with the end in mind, start with what good looks like. Make sure there is a shared understanding of what it takes for us to win. And then the metrics, of course, follow and only amplify the goodness that's happening. Whether it's, high intent accounts, whether it's our penetration within those high intent accounts, whether it is how those accounts are moving through the journey, whether it's the mix of tactics or mix of marketing campaigns that they're interacting with, whether it's here's where sales gets involved and here's where marketing gets involved, here's the handoff. All of those metrics then really lend itself to telling that story of a very complex B2B buying journey.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because I've heard so many like attribution is something that comes up so much. And it seems like it'd be a bad, kind of a difficult topic to discuss with people because it gets real wonky in terms of first touch, last touch, what attribution model are you going to use, but it's really so much more nuanced. And I think that's what you're saying is there's a story that to be told in all those touches that just influences. And so marketing influence is really important and how you tell that story to sales and executives is really it's really good that you touch on that. The one thing I also saw was that I think it's important for Sixth Sense marketers to be kind of seen as customer zero. So they're like should know how to use the platform, which I think any good marketer these days needs to be a technical marketer. Like you have to know the tools. Was that I don't know if that was something that you instituted or it was there before you, but was that part of the success there? And
Yeah.
can you share a story maybe of where you're like, "Oh, man, we were using the tool and it really led to a groundbreaking thing for us, not just for our customers?"
Yeah, every day I would say. I came in with the benefit of I was a Six Sense customer for 5 years. And so when I joined the company, it was all about let's show how we're using it. Uh, the fact that we were marketing to marketers is exciting, right? Because marketers get it. And because we were the target persona, we recognize that by showing them the power and the promise of the platform versus just telling them, it's just so much more interesting. And it also beyond that, of course, lends a sense of credibility to what the platform can do. It showed our openness as an organization to show our open up our playbook and show what's working, which is also helps us drive innovation within the organization. Because if we know we're opening our playbook, we're sharing what's working, everyone in the team wants to continue to push the platform to be the best it can be. And so we love sharing what works, but also being open and sharing here's what didn't work necessarily. And so learn from our mistakes, learn from our challenges. Um, I think it was hugely successful. It allowed us to, of course, again, build a trusted relationship with our target persona, but also it allowed us to inform the product roadmap. It allowed us to get early access and be alpha testers for what's coming up so that by the time a new product came to market, we'd already shown the playbook. We had it ready to go and we had success metrics and criteria that we could also show. I think the most successful example, since you asked, is probably when we launched our AI email product probably 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago. We that was early days of adopting AI to actually interact with your prospects. And we were early adopters. And we were able to, by the end of the first year, have 25% of our net new business pipeline being generated autonomously using AI agents. I mean, crazy town, right? It's just so exciting to be able to do that, but it doesn't happen overnight. And so being able to say, here's the plays that worked. Here's what you need to institute from an operations perspective. Here's how the handoff from BDRs to from marketing to BDRs changes. Here's how we handle the change management with the BDR org. I mean, there's so many learnings and so many marketers were interested in that. And so I think
Yeah.
if you have an opportunity of being customer zero and showing that, it's a fantastic way to show the promise and in the actual use of the product, but also just, be open and honest
Yeah,
with
the
your
build it in
prospects.
public, like, the part of the brand of Sixth Sense, the build it in public thing is so cool, and there's other tech brands that do that, and they tend to get very, loyal customer bases because they can see the mistakes you're making and they can see how you're tweaking the system. They might see it end up back in the product roadmap. There are
Yeah,
lot of
one of our, we have an annual customer conference. We had fantastic customers, and the highest rated session every year was the 6th Street Live session where me and the marketing team got up there and said, "Here's what's working for us," and
yeah.
walked through plays, had a great Q&A. We loved doing it.
Yeah, people love that stuff, and I see a lot of content from that, so it's really awesome. So that gets me to, like, the brand side of things because tech companies I think this is changing, but tech companies have been notorious to dig into demand too much without a strong brand. Or Sixth Sense has probably the strongest brand in the category. You're kinda category creator. I wonder, um, I wonder, was there a moment when you're I guess there probably wasn't at Sixth Sense because you had such a strong brand, but many of the people I talk to, there's a moment when they're investing in brand and they're like, "Ah, is this gonna work?" And then they hit a bad quarter, and then they have to go back to the demand side. Um, how did you hold your nerve on the brand stuff? Why was it so important to you?
Gosh, so important. And I think it's part of the story we told as a marketing team as well, that you have to be thinking of a holistic brand to demand strategy. And I say this as an operational data analytics person who had a pretty hefty pipeline goal to hit, but you can't over rotate on that. Great brands have higher average selling prices. Great brands have lower customer acquisition costs. The research is out there, right? You shouldn't have to necessarily even fight that fight because it is a known thing. Strong brands to perform better. Now, how can marketers really take that and do something with it is every single campaign that we stood up at Six Sense and even before Six Sense in my career, it has been about telling the brand to demand story. So it's not just a bottom of funnel campaign. What is the top of funnel portion of it? How are we moving the needle with accounts in our ICP that we know would benefit from this, right? Starting with this holistic strategy of who is the ICP? What do they care about? How do we start those conversations early on? And then how do we bring them through to that journey where they'll ultimately convert? You need to really be hitting all phases of that journey, no matter the campaign that you're launching. And so everything that we did, whether it was a net new product launch, whether it was a new campaign that was going to be hitting on specific use cases, we always started right from the top of the funnel and made sure that we had a cohesive strategy and a cohesive set of marketing tactics to hit all of the areas of our prospects and all meet them where they were in their journey. Because not everyone's ready to register for a webinar, not everyone's ready to talk to sales. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be in front of them, speaking to the problems that they might be facing.
Yeah, it's so logical. I mean, it's how we buy, right? If you're gonna buy something, it's just how you evaluate products these days. What were the markers that though that you had to they were you were using at the brand stage to at least evaluate what it was brand working? Was it impacting demand down funnel? Like, what did you look as an analytics person? I'm interested in hearing
Yeah,
what the
so
markers.
much. So we obviously there's tools out there that can help you understand share of voice and power of voice. We use the Sixth Sense platform to understand what portion of the ICP moved from showing no intent to showing early signs of intent, and so that progression of accounts through the funnel. I think your web traffic is another great indicator. So what is the direct traffic? What is the organic traffic that's coming your way? And then also, keyword consumption. Is your brand being mentioned? Is it being referenced? Is content being consumed that is more top of funnel? Is content being consumed in places on third party websites where you wouldn't have otherwise known? And so all of those metrics, some through the Sixth Sense platform, some elsewhere, and some just through Google Analytics, played a role in us telling that holistic story of where we're showing up and beyond just reaching the target accounts. Are they actually engaging with the content?
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, that's really good for people to hear because I think people don't think about those measures enough. And you have to in some companies you really have to defend that brand investment. So just having the looking at it from a full funnel perspective is really smart. Okay, so now I want to pivot a bit from the success experience to your experience leading, talking to so many CMOs because you had the podcast, the CMO Coffee Talk community. I mean, you probably have one of the best views of I don't know, is it probably literally hundreds of CMOs that you've talked to?
Thousands,
Yeah, maybe
thousands are
thousands,
at this
yeah,
point.
so if
Yeah.
we need a, Saima, GPT, like, we need to put your brain inside GPT, but, yeah, I wanted to throw out a few imperatives that I'm hearing about, and then we'll talk about your own, and just get your perspective on them from a, broad CMO perspective. So let me start with just the AI mandate. I'm hearing that, from conversations that I'm having, there's a big gap between executive sort of AI mandate that's going on and what marketers are actually able to execute on the ground. Do you see that gap, and why do you believe it exists? Like, what's the reason for the gap?
Yeah, I do see a gap, but I do see across the C suite, I think chief market officer has been the one that's really been carrying the gauntlet in so many companies of actually driving AI innovation and adoption. I see it, and I hear from it from so many CMOs who have been kind of given that, hey, we need an AI strategy. Let's go implement it. Also, I think some of the very early, more use cases that come to mind are related to marketing, content creation, right? Design really lend themselves well to implementing AI. I would say the biggest sort of way to overcome that gap is I don't think necessarily the marketing leader needs to be the one doing it, but I think they need to create a culture of innovation within their organization, create a culture where you are giving people the freedom to try new things, even fail, but at least iterate quickly enough. And so that can be done by creating, at Six Sense, I instituted a marketing AI, a monthly AI lunch and learn. Anyone from the marketing team could come up and show, what's working for them. Here's how they're using AI in their role. I think you can do hackathons where get the marketing org together for a day and ideate within your individual teams how AI can be helping. There's tools out there. There's so much information out there. So I think creating that culture, obviously within your overall organization's AI guidelines, right? But encourage the experimentation, encourage the innovation, and I think teams will feel empowered and maybe get over some of the fear of AI is going to come and take our jobs. The goal is not to have AI take your job. The goal is to have AI streamline your work, maybe allow you to iterate faster and then focus on more interesting things for your own career growth. And so I think it really starts at the top, but it doesn't it can't only be there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's we do a thing we call Sparks once a month, or we're trying to do it every couple weeks, but it's basically the way I see AI is like some of our people need to just see a spark of how to use it.
There you go.
And so we just exposed them to these different sparks this last week. And this one kind of fell flat. We did AI Studio in Gemini, and of course, you can create a bunch of media, but you can also create apps. And it was a little too complex for people that weren't like super into the AI thing. But the time before we did deep research, but it really is like you just need the spark. You need something in the back of your mind that goes, oh, I remember I did this here, and I can now apply it to something that happened. So I completely agree. I wonder your perspective on just tool sets, and there's so much technology out there that's promising AI, um, and you've got sort of the big players like Sixth Sense or Salesforce has their own embedded AI. And then you've got all these little micro tools that are like fit for purpose. I mean, there are literally probably thousands of them right now.
Yeah.
As a CMO, I have an opinion on this, but as a CMO, how do you rationalize like what are we going to use in the stack here?
Think personally, I have seen that a more cohesive strategy as opposed to individual point solutions that might do a thing here or a thing there. I lean more towards a more cohesive strategy. You want AI to be helping with consistency of your message. You want AI to be helping with speed and efficiency, right? That only happens when the tools are integrated and singing from the same sheet of music. So I think that choreography of your tool stack is really important. And so where we can consolidate, I'm a fan of consolidating because it eliminates gaps, it eliminates, issues with handoffs or just the left side not really sounding like the right side. I'm a fan of using that where you can and driving better integration. But certain point solutions, sure, if they can help you, in a vacuum, that's great too. Um, I think as long as the AIs are trained with contextual knowledge of your brand, of your customers, of your messaging, it's the most crucial thing. Um, because in a world where everyone is using AI at this point, everyone's going to start to sound the same. Everyone's going to start to, mimic each other's messaging. And the best companies are the ones that will always infuse their humanness, their soul, their brand into the AI and maybe use it not just as a end product deliverable, but maybe as the starting point so that there is that, beautiful sort of, AI plus humans working together to create something fantastic.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that was my thought too. Is consolidation of platforms to the big guys because they're doing so much innovation and very selective use of all the other tools because there's so much goodness in the stack that you have. It's just hard to there's not really much of a reason to go outside and just keeping
Well, and you
accountable
want
to
to,
that.
again,
It's tough.
yeah, avoid random acts of AI and random
Yeah,
acts
that's
of
right.
marketing. You still want, it goes back to the same principles we started with.
Yeah,
Create a cohesive full funnel journey for your prospects. Use AI, by the way, to help it and superpower it and all of that. But you've still got to be crafting a really relevant journey.
yeah,
And that doesn't change whether you're using AI at all parts of it or whether you're not.
that's right. Yeah, totally. Okay, let me pivot to the second imperative, which I'll call the accountability mandate. So there's so much pressure on CMOs these days. I'm sure you're hearing it in the coffee talks. Like, how do we do this right? What's the real accountability challenge that are facing CMOs in boardrooms? Like, what are you hearing them say
Yeah.
beyond just hitting a pipeline number? What's the challenge that they're facing?
Yeah, I think it's a very consistent challenge I'm hearing, and I'm sure it's not limited to marketing, but marketers are feeling it. Limited or reduced budgets, reduced headcount. The goals haven't changed, by the way, and so there's just heightened expectations of what marketers are being expected to achieve. Qualified pipeline is a fantastic metric for a CMO to be able to, get a seat at the table and show the impact of marketing. But I think what CMOs need to be doing is learning the language of the CFO and being able to, beyond, a qualified pipeline goal, share the overall impact of what their organization is accomplishing. That includes hitting on the brand metrics that we spoke about, and especially in a world of, AEO and GEO, where the SEO game has changed. You need to be showing how you're influencing early stages of the journey, how your PR is really helping get you mentioned by the LLMs. I think you also need to be speaking in the context of what good looks like. And so when I say speaking the language of the CFO, what are the benchmarks of your size of your team, of the output of the team, of the efficiency, right? How do you compare to companies in a similar industry, in a similar size? What is your pipeline golden number, right? Spending X dollars of marketing budget yields X dollars of qualified pipeline. And how are you improving that? What is your people to program ratio? If you take a dollar from here and put it here, what will the outcome be? And so being really comfortable with your numbers and having it a really defensible um, strategy to show that not only do you understand all of the mechanics of how this works, but that here's how you are adapting your strategy to meet the reality of today's market, because the playbook that we ran 3 years ago doesn't work anymore, especially when we're being squeezed with higher expectations. You've got to be able to show how you're going to be impacting that strategy and how you are going to change and adapt. um, it's not easy, especially if you
Mm.
haven't had to do it. But I think the more CMOs can get there, and so many brilliant CMOs I talk to every day, like they are there, they understand this, and they are telling that story in boardrooms to the C suite. And beyond that, sharing that with their team so that the entire team understands here's the reality, here's what we're working towards. It's going to be hard, but we can do it together. And I think the more you can align the entire org around that, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah, really good. What about the CRO, the chief sales officer? Is that also I mean, I love how you frame the CFO relationship. In my experience, CFOs can be very rational. They don't seem that way, but if you present the data in the right way, they'll listen to you. What about on the sales side?
My gosh, that goes without saying. I think that's probably why I didn't even mention it because one of the most important relationships you're fostering as a CMO is that alignment with sales. I would go a step beyond and even say with your chief customer officer because marketing's going to have an upsell goal or influence upsells, influence retention. Marketing needs to be partnering with both the CRO and the CCO, even as we're going back to identifying the ICP, because we don't necessarily want to be selling churns. We want to be selling to customers who are successful. That relationship needs to be a daily, weekly alignment relationship. You asked when I joined Six Sense, what did you put in place? And one of the first things I did put in place was the operating rhythm of a biweekly pipeline meeting that eventually moved to a weekly cadence where the CMO, the CRO, representation from CS, representation from ops folks, they were all in the room so that we all had a shared understanding of here's what we're doing today. Here's where we're finding the red, by the way. Here's maybe where there's a problem and here are the actions we're going to take to address it. So it's not sales versus marketing versus customer. Everyone is in it together, and we are coming back week after week and making sure that we're continuing to all have a shared, consistent understanding of reality and maybe a gap in where we need to be, and then how we're going to tackle the gap.
Yeah, I love that you said I didn't even think of the CSO because that of course you have to talk to that
You have to.
CSO. And but I think it takes a certain amount of there's a certain amount of empathy that you need and understanding of what they're up against. And you really, it's a service organization. Marketing, to some degree, is a service organization to sales. Now it goes the other way too, because they have to follow up on the stuff. But I think there is a lot of uncomfortable relationships that marketing leaders may have in both directions, CFO and CRO. And it seems like data and understanding lies at the pivot point of making those two things work.
It can be a great point of alignment, right? The data can. And by the way, that goes right back to even earlier than reviewing the data, but what are the goals that we are setting for ourselves as an organization? I am a fan of a single pipeline goal, not a marketing source number versus a sales source number. Of course, you need to break things down by channel. Of course, you need to be, looking at specific levers, but there should be one pipeline goal that we're all working towards. And we're all going to work on it together. If there's softness in one area, here's how another area is going to pick it up. If AEs are generating less pipeline this quarter, here's how marketing is going to step in and vice versa. But again, having that shared North Star helps drive the alignment then throughout the journey.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, let me go to my third mandate, which is the talent mandate. So, just finding the right people, keeping the right people. What do you think the most critical skill you see missing from marketing teams today that's going to be more non-negotiable over the next couple years? Or is there some skill that's like, wow, we have to have this in place?
I think more than a skill, I would say a value is probably I've hired many, many, many people over the years. I think there's something to be said about a curiosity and a drive. And I don't think that's changed in the 22 years that I have been working. We want to hire curious people who want to do really great things and are driven to do it. And so consistently having that, looking for that, and then getting out of their way, frankly, is what a leader needs to be doing. And so empowering the team to do that. Skills specifically, I think, again, curiosity and drive will bring folks who are looking to innovate, who are looking to simplify the things that they're doing, who will be early adopters of new technology, who will be curious enough to go find better technologies to streamline what we're doing, who will take inspiration from great campaigns that are out there, right? So I think that comes with hiring well and then creating a culture of innovation. I am a very staunch believer that you need diverse teams to be able to get diverse viewpoints. And so I think that again goes back to hiring and building a team of, if everyone looks like you and sounds like you and agrees with you, that's a problem. And so, encouraging right from the onset of when you're posting a role, what is the pool of candidates that you're looking at, making sure that you've got a mix of viewpoints and a mix of people coming in is helps build the best teams. And then I think performance management, it is really, really important. I think, making sure that you're evaluating your teams, you're speaking to your teams, you've got really clear goals set for them, and you're having regular conversations to make sure that they're being challenged, that they're being inspired. And if not, you might need to have difficult conversations. I think feedback is a gift. I am a fan of delivering feedback in the moment, good and bad feedback, so that everyone is on the same page. And that again is just really important to me as a leader, and it goes back to that, your question of skills and empathy and building fantastic teams.
Yeah, what's the environment out there like right now for CMOs as you talk to all these different marketing leaders? How are they feeling about the availability of these type of people? Like what's the general feeling? I know a lot of people that are looking for
Yeah,
roles that aren't CMOs. So what's the
yeah.
environment like for
I,
hiring right now?
I think the environment is that there's a lot of really great people on the market,
Yeah, I totally
uh,
agree. Yeah.
a lot of fantastic talent out there, and folks who have, played multiple roles, seasoned players who are able to come in and do great work. And so, because budgets and headcount has been declining for many, many marketing teams, folks who are on these teams have had to wear multiple hats
Yeah.
and change the way they're doing things and get scrappier. And so I think there's fantastic people out there, and CMOs are very lucky that they have a pick of really great candidates.
I
And I
completely
hope
agree.
that, things turn and we can get all of them into fantastic roles.
Yeah, it's amazing the talents that's available right now. And sort of AI is kind of a superpower to make people more generalists across so many different things. So yeah, I'm just finding some people that are T-shaped, but the T is real wide across, but the bottom thing is like expanding too. I don't know if that ends up being a square at some point. It's so
Yeah.
generalist, but there's a lot of good people out there. Um, so those were my three mandates, but you have a lot more perspective than I do on some of the conversations with CMOs. Are there one or two other things that you're hearing from the CMO community that are strategic imperatives for the upcoming year or things they're struggling with? Just what's your perspective on the CMO mindset right now?
Yeah. I think you hit on the most important ones. I think more tactically, CMOs really need to understand the AEO and GEO landscape, and understanding how their search and their web traffic is going to change in the new reality, whether it is changing the way they are producing content, whether it is taking on tools to allow you to build for the new reality. Either way, it just seems like there's I think more panic out there of our traffic's declining and what are we going to do? But I think it's an opportunity here for CMOs to really lean in into third party resources, into other areas that maybe have been a little bit on the back burner to meet the market where it is. Um, I also think, net new tools. The landscape is changing so much. So staying on top of what is working with your peers, what is working with your competition. I think in times of change, it's an amazing opportunity to innovate and to try new things. And so I would say, there's an opportunity there over the coming year. I will say, we hit on this earlier, there is still a huge importance on the overall brand to demand journey. And I think it is imperative that CMOs and marketers in general are focusing on that entire journey from the top of funnel, investing in brand, investing in community, investing in you know, great content that is helpful as opposed to just there to get the conversion. You know, again, with the proliferation of AI, there's so much nonsense out there that it really comes back to basics of creating high quality content that solves a problem for your target prospect and is just meeting them where they are.
Yeah, go figure. That's what it's always been. Maybe the channels have changed and the formats a bit, but it just goes back to the basics. I'm wondering, what's the amazing thing, and I can't completely describe it right now, but we're seeing a lot of activity through ChatGPT and deep research. I just talked to someone yesterday who found us through deep research. I'm wondering for a more established brand like Sixth Sense, were you seeing activity coming directly from the AI search engines, the LLM?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
could you
We were
quantify the percentage? Like, was it a significant enough percentage yet?
It's still small. I
Yeah.
I I think the panic is out there is a bit more than
Yeah,
maybe
I would agree.
reality. It is still and we have a great brand, so there's a lot of direct
Yeah,
and organic traffic that came
yep.
to sixthsense.com. So the proportion coming from LLMs was small, but it was increasing, and it was significant enough that we did need to be able we were absolutely putting things in place on the website and in the content and in our channels to make sure that we were speaking to what the LLMs were. A great little trick is, by the way, ask the LLM,
Mhm,
you
yeah,
know, how, where am I mentioned? What can I do to be mentioned more? What are your recommendations, right? Like it's obviously ask it questions about, your market and, vendors in the market and comparable solutions, but like just ask it, what do I need to do to be, for you to cite me more? And it's actually a really interesting exercise. Could you get some good tips in there?
yeah, completely. I am finding that the stuff that comes through deep research, I don't know if you found the same thing, they seem to be better qualified than a cold, form submit, let's say. Something about
Yes.
someone seeing deep research, it's almost like it's more trusted because it's coming through the AI. Like the AI has been really smart and it's called out these people, these let's say vendors or partners, and the people that I'm talking to that come through ChatGPT seem to be already pre-vetted and like way down funnel. It's really interesting.
It really is. There was some research we had done at Six Sense where we saw that 81% of the time, B2B buyers have picked a vendor before they're ever going to reach out. And
Yeah,
they end up going with that chosen vendor, that first conversation that they have most of the
crazy.
time.
Yeah,
And so we've got really savvy buyers. We've
yeah,
got really well informed buyers. And so we've got to continue to make sure that the content and the campaigns and the collateral that we're putting out there is helping them get to that point because you want to be the one controlling that 81% of the journey.
yeah. And if you're not on day one list, let's say you're not a Sixth Sense, but you're competing, it's gotta feel really challenging to try to get to that level of
Yeah.
day 1 or at least the top 3 because you hear stats like this, if you're not in the top 3, if you're not on the day 1 list, then, they already have you
It's
picked out.
over.
So for
Yeah.
smaller brands, it's gotta be I don't know if you have CMOs in the Coffee Talk community that are with smaller brands, but what advice would you give a CMO if you are not in a category leadership position, but you hear these stats? Like, what would you do? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I would say go to the data. The
Ah,
deals that you are winning, the
yeah,
demand that you are generating, where is that coming from? That's a really great indicator of you're doing that well. You might want to lean in more and put some more gasoline on the things that are working. At the same time, then start to investigate those other areas that aren't working as much and start to really adjust and, fix those specific channels and test to see what would work well for you. So when you know what's working well, great. That's a great starting point to lean in. And then, of course, go broader, understand, okay, if your, inbound funnel is weak, here's what we need to do. If, specific advertising isn't working, are you targeting the right accounts? Is your, like, go down. I mean, I'm in the data and I love going deep. Is it specific ad copy that's working better than other ad copy? Like you really got to get in there and diagnose and dissect. But for brands, I mean, if you are generating some demand, what's working? Go do
yeah.
more of that.
Yeah, really good advice because you can get lost in the stats of, "Oh, I'm never gonna make it up to those top 3." But it's doing something is better than doing nothing or getting lost in just the broadness of it all. So I think it's
Yeah,
really
and
good.
maybe it's a real one specific persona in the 12 that we know is in the buying team that is really receptive to what you're doing. Great. How do we go deeper with that persona? And then how do we expand to meet those other ones? So goes back to having a really good understanding of your ICP, of the buyer's journey, of the buying group, and then making sure that you are meeting all of them where they are.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, that's been great. Let's kind of master class of the CMO mind. I wanted to do one more thing before I let you go. I do this thing called AI roulette, where I put a question in perplexity, and then it comes out with a amazing question better than I could ask. So I'm going to click the button. I've already put in your profile and a little bit about your background. I put in the brief from our conversation today. So I'm going to hit send here, and
Should
let's
I be
see.
scared?
No. No, it hasn't done anything crazy yet, but this might be the first time. You never know, Simon. Okay, so here we go. Okay, Simon, imagine you could go back to your first day at Six Sense and leave a sealed envelope on your desk. Inside is a single sentence, a piece of advice based on everything you know now. What does that sentence say?
What a great question.
It's a great question.
If I could put a sentence in, it's a very short sentence. And I think I learned this very much at Six Sense. The sentences say yes.
Mm,
And it is say yes to whatever challenge or opportunity is being given to you, whether it's in your role description or not, by the way. I mean, for a data and analytics leader to end up leading all of marketing tells you that you've got to be going beyond maybe the the four sides of the box that, your role description is. You've got to say yes to figuring it out, to trying the new thing, to having the hard conversation, to putting yourself out there. And so that would be the sentence. And it's actually, I think, when you've taken some time off, you really have an opportunity to have a retrospective, not just on, maybe the last couple of years, but even longer than that. And I would say it has been a hallmark of my career to lean into the yes, even when it's scary, even when you don't know what you're doing. You've got to at least start with, you know, trying and saying, I'm going to do it.
I love that answer. So simple, but you're right. Um, I love it. By the way, did you see the movie Yes Man?
I have not seen it. I
Jim
feel
Carrey?
like
Oh,
I need to.
you need to see it. It's with Jim Carrey. He has to say yes to everything, and so the whole
Ah,
movie is him saying yes to all these crazy things. So you should watch it. It's hilarious, but it turns out well for him in the end. The
there you
yes
go.
actually works, and he ends up getting everything he wants in life just through saying yes. So really
Well,
good
there you
answer.
go.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm really honored that you spent this time. Great. All this was just really, really great, especially as you're taking some time off. So I really do appreciate it, Saima. I know people can get a hold of you during on the LinkedIn channel, and I would recommend people watch the podcast, Six Sense podcast, which is fantastic. And I'll put those links in. But are there other ways that you want people to keep in touch with you? Um, uh,
LinkedIn is the best way.
cool.
I'll be updating in a couple weeks on the next gig that I'm so excited to take on, and so I hope people will connect, and I hope people will follow. I always love learning from everyone.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Saima. And hopefully we'll meet up live at some point in the future. Best
Thanks,
of luck to you.
Kevin.